It all begins in the halls of UCLA, where a young screenwriting student named Gregory Wyden was working on an assignment for his class. He had no idea at the time that this assignment would evolve into something legendary. Wyden, deeply fascinated by history and storytelling, penned a script originally titled Shadow Clan. This script was significantly influenced by Ridley Scott's film The Duelists from 1977. The idea of an enduring duel, one that stretched over years, captivated him. This seed of inspiration grew as Wyden visited Scotland and the Tower of London. Standing amidst the ancient armor, he wondered, what if someone had lived through all these eras? What if they owned this armor, each piece a chapter of their long storied life? From this came the central idea. There were immortals engaged in an age-long battle, living secret lives among us. This imaginative concept found a place in his script, adding a layer of depth and personal history to the characters. Working through college as a firefighter, Wyden would later turn an incident of a fellow firefighter dying in a backdraft into the Ron Howard film called Backdraft. He turned this script in half expecting to be chastened for his work because it didn't conform to the artistic sensibilities that many film instructors had. But on the contrary, his instructor, recognizing the potential in Wyden's work, urged him to take the next step. Following this advice, Wyden sent his script to an agent, and it wasn't long before it caught the eyes of producers Peter S. Davis and William N. Panzer. They were entranced by its blend of fantasy, action, and the sweep of historical drama. Wyden's script, a blend of his historical interest and inspired imagination, was sold for a whopping $200,000, a considerable sum for a student. As work began on revising the script, the film was renamed Highlander. In Gregory Wyden's original vision, the script he penned was darker and more visceral than the final film. In this earlier narrative, Connor MacLeod's journey began earlier in the year 1408. His life, woven into the fabric of a quaint village, was shared not with Heather, but with his parents, a younger brother, and a betrothed named Mara. Mara, unlike the accepting Heather, recoils from Connor upon learning of his immortality, a twist that adds a layer of tragedy to his tale. In this version, the dynamics of Connor's life shift dramatically. Rather than being cast out by his clan, he chooses to depart, a decision marked not by rejection, but by a change in the hearts of those he called kin. His alias in this world is Richard Taupin, and his trusted weapon is a broadsword of his own design. Ramirez, the mentor and friend, emerges not as the ancient Egyptian we know, but as a Spaniard born in 1100, and the Kurgan is known as the Knight, masquerading as Carl William Smith. Rather than the brute seen in the film, the Knight is a cold, calculating assassin, his savagery replaced with chilling precision. Brenda, the inquisitive historian, transforms into Brenna Cartwright of the Smithsonian. This Brenna, with her deep ties to history, sometimes lends her expertise to the police, adding layers of complexity to her character. Wyden's world also initially allowed immortals to have children. In fact, Connor is said to have fathered 37 children. One particularly moving scene from the original draft reveals Connor at the funeral of one of his sons, a moment that lays bare the cost of eternal life. His aging wife and middle-aged sons can't help but notice his undying nature, a revelation that intertwines the pain of immortality with the bonds of family, poignant for someone from a society where the clan is in many ways an extension of the family. His departure in this draft showed the need to leave family behind. In these early pages, the Immortals' battles lacked the explosive release of energy seen in the film. The prize, too, was absent, leaving the Immortals' purpose shrouded in more mystery. The final confrontation with the Knight leaves Connor with a searing pain, a stark reminder of the endless struggle known as the game, a journey that, in this draft, was far from over. The irony that the film was changed to bring an end to the game, only for a franchise to necessitate essentially ignoring it, Makes one wonder if the climactic victory and gaining the prize was part of what made the original film successful enough to have a franchise, and that without it, the story might have ended there. Russell Mulcahy's journey to become the director of Highlander is a story of serendipity and his unique artistic vision. Mulcahy had made a name for himself in the world of music videos, pioneering the use of fast cuts and stylistic storytelling. He was particularly noted for his work with the music group Duran Duran, creating visually striking and narratively ambitious videos for their songs. These videos were not only popular but also critically acclaimed, showcasing Mulcahy's flair for blending music with visually engaging narratives. This background in music videos, where Mulcahy honed his skills in creating high-energy, visually captivating pieces, caught the attention of the producers of Highlander, because they were looking for someone who could bring a fresh, dynamic approach to the film. Mulcahy's ability to tell stories in a visually compelling manner, coupled with his innovative use of camera work and lighting, made him an appealing choice for a film that required a blend of action, fantasy, and drama. When Mulcahy was approached for Highlander, he was intrigued by the script's unique blend of time-traveling fantasy and action. The concept of immortal warriors battling through the centuries with a storyline that interwove historical drama with contemporary settings presented a challenge that appealed to his creative sensibilities. Mulcahy saw an opportunity to bring his distinctive style to the big screen, transitioning from the short format of music videos to the expansive canvas of feature filmmaking. There are moments when the film clearly has the sensibilities of a quality music video, especially in its period transitions. This approach to storytelling, with a strong emphasis on visual narrative and emotional depth, was an integral part of the film's atmosphere and look. Mulcahy had an intriguing moment that would shape the film's casting. While browsing through a magazine, his eyes landed on a photograph of Christopher Lambert, known for his role in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. He showed Lambert's photo to his production team, intrigued by this actor who, at the time, was not well known and barely spoke English. Yet Lambert had a look that Mulcahy found perfect for the role of Connor MacLeod. Despite the language barrier, Lambert was a quick study, rapidly learning English for the part. Before settling on Lambert, Mulcahy had considered other actors, including Kurt Russell and Mickey Rourke, for the lead role, but in the end it was realized Lambert was the only one who could do it justice. Lambert was attracted to the role as it was in the script, though that might not have been the case if they'd gone with the original version, where Connor MacLeod was a somber figure shaped by centuries of violence and loss. But the film brought a different dimension to MacLeod, a character who, despite his suffering and reluctance to form new attachments, still held on to a sense of honor and the possibility of love. He was a man who encouraged hope and optimism even in the darkest of times. Lambert found that appealing. To carry 500 years of existence, all the violence and suffering and love and pain, and yet not surrender to cynicism. To be strong, to laugh, to consider even after what he'd endured, to maybe even love again. It was a testament to the human spirit in a unique way, not triumphing over death, but triumphing over the absence of death. The producers and Mulcahy were keen on having a high-profile actor for the role of Ramirez, as they believed it would not only bring depth to the character, but also lend the film a greater level of credibility and appeal. Sean Connery, with his charismatic screen presence and proven track record, fit this requirement perfectly. Already a well-established and highly respected actor, known of course for his roles in the James Bond series and of course various other films, was an attractive choice for the role of Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, the immortal mentor to Christopher Lambert's Connor MacLeod. Connery was intrigued by the character of Ramirez, a sophisticated and ancient immortal warrior. The role offered a departure from the types of characters he was most known for, presenting an opportunity to play a mentor with a rich historical background and a sense of grandeur. Additionally, the fantasy elements and the unique storyline of Highlander presented a fresh and interesting project for Connery. Connery would be on set for a relatively short period, given the nature of his supporting role, but his impact on the film was significant. His portrayal of Ramirez brought a sense of sophistication, charm, and depth to the film, greatly enhancing its appeal and helping to elevate it from a simple fantasy action film to a cult classic with a broader audience. To bring to life the malevolent Kurgan, the filmmakers went with Clancy Brown, the perfect fit for a complex villain. Known for his imposing stature and deep, resonant voice, Brown brought a menacing and powerful presence to the film of the Kurgan, the primary antagonist in the film, a perfect foil for Lambert and Connery. His timelessness made him a very atypical villain, brutal and savage from a time when the entire world was brutal and savage, yet shaped by his extraordinary long life into a character as psychologically complex as he was physically intimidating. Brown infused the Kurgan with a sense of dark humor and a nihilistic outlook, making him a more layered and memorable villain. It wasn't just about physicality. It was also about creating an aura of danger and unpredictability about the character. Indeed, Brown had wanted to go even further, more of the direction of the knight from the original version, and even put him in a suit with a bowler hat to hide his nature and respectability. In film, few elements can capture the imagination quite like a well-executed sword fight. An integral part of the film's success were these riveting action sequences. Yet behind them lay a dedication to authentic and skillful swordplay, choreographed by none other than Bob Anderson, a legend in Hollywood swordsmanship. An Olympic fencer for Great Britain and the swordmaster behind iconic films such as the Star Wars series and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Anderson even, in fact, was a stunt double for Darth Vader at one point. He was tasked with bringing realism to the film's sword fights. Anderson's expertise was not just in choreographing visually stunning duels, but also in ensuring they remained true to the characters' historical and cultural backgrounds. The actors underwent rigorous training in sword fighting, preparation vital for Lambert, who had no previous experience in this area. The training sessions spanned several months, focusing on perfecting movements that were historically accurate and visually compelling. Indeed, it's been said that Lambert would show up, spend 4 hours working on his English, and then spend 4 hours practicing his swordsmanship. The use of real swords in filming added a layer of authenticity, but also demanded strict safety protocols. The actors and stunt performers engaged in intense, physically demanding sequences that required precision and care in order to avoid injuries. The production's commitment to using substantial, albeit dulled swords heightened the realism of each clash. This would prove to be a sticking point, though, for Connery, who found himself on the receiving end of Brown's overenthusiasm to the point that he walked off the set, believing the focus on realism was compromising safety, possibly to the point of mortal danger. They had to take further steps to ensure that for all the high energy of the fight, that there was always safety at the forefront. The result of this effort, though, was stunning. Some of it was down to improvisation and adjustments made on the day to make these engagements fluid and dynamic, while also remaining true to the realism of it based upon their history. It was helped by a production team dedicated to making the custom swords both realistic yet unique. The Kurgan's enormous broadsword that he memorably assembles, and MacLeod's katana, gifted from Ramirez and supposedly made by a great Japanese master, with a dragon head handle. The blades were aluminum in keeping with the idea of safety, but carried such realism that they went on to become popular replicas. Michael Kamen was brought on board to create the orchestral score for Highlander. Highlander, with the arguable exception of Brazil, was the first mainstream film Kamen scored, though he would go on to score the Lethal Weapon and Die Hard franchises, as well as films such as X-Men, Lara Croft, and The Iron Giant. The music effortlessly shifted between the moments in time, audibly contributing to the sense of place. His score heightened the tension and drama of the sword-fighting sequences, yet also underscored key emotional scenes, like the love story between Connor and Heather, and the poignant realization of the burden of immortality. And perhaps a less well-known but vital role, Kamen arranged some of the songs for the film to create a seamless blend of rock and classical. The band he did that for was, of course, Queen. With Mulcahy's background in music videos, naturally there were a number of bands that he had connections to, and there was a real possibility of Duran Duran or David Bowie making a song for the film. But Queen, who were only supposed to contribute one song, watched a rough cut of the film. The band, especially Freddie Mercury, were so inspired they wrote more songs, so much it was hard to tell whether this was a film soundtrack or a new Queen album. The rousing opening, Princes of the Universe, sets the stage for the grand and epic tale that these final days of the game are. The song It's a Kind of Magic, that would title the album, is a celebration of the film's lore, and the heart-wrenching song to both celebrate and lament the relationship between Connor and Heather, Who Wants to Live Forever, which remains a celebrated Queen hit. Despite bringing in such recognized talent as Sean Connery and Queen, Clancy Brown later mentioned that the producers were cutting corners everywhere they could. One instance was when it was announced that they weren't going to feed breakfast to the army of Scottish extras. When an AD threatened to bring in Sean Connery, who naturally would have solidarity with his fellow Scottish performers, it was agreed that they would be fed. Nevertheless, in a rather bizarre moment, the extras burned Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in effigy as a protest. There was also a bit of a problem with the extras being a little too into it, so that some of the blows delivered in the film were actually real. One extra would graze another with his knuckles on one take, so the next take the other would just connect, and soon their battles had actual fighting taking place during them. And to help make the final climactic battle even more exciting, they chose to make the sword fighting electrifying. Literally. Wires connected to batteries were run up their sleeves so that when the blades connected, there'd be sparks. When Highlander was released in 1986, it received a lukewarm response from many film critics. The primary criticisms were directed at its perceived uneven pacing, confusing narrative structure, particularly due to the nonlinear storytelling and the frequent flashbacks, and some aspects of the acting and directing. Despite its innovative concept and the visual flair brought by director Russell Mulcahy, the film didn't immediately resonate with the critical establishment. However, the audience reception was quite different. Highlander quickly garnered a dedicated fan base and achieved a kind of cult status among moviegoers. Fans were drawn to its unique blend of fantasy, action, romance, and the philosophical questions it raised about immortality and time, not to mention Queen's music. While its financial success in the U.S. market was modest, the film performed better in European markets and eventually found a much larger audience through home video sales and rentals. The film's growing popularity in the home video market was a key factor in its enduring appeal and contributed to the decision to make a sequel in spite of the critics and the lukewarm American sales. The film has been reevaluated and recognized as a classic, blending fantasy swordsmanship with a slick, fresh look. So let's take a look at the classic movie Highlander.